The overall paradigms of the West are so riddled with flaws that extracting any good from them, it's just not worth the trouble. It's really not worth the trouble, because it's very difficult to actually extract any good from them without bringing along the bad, because it's just bad that you haven't analyzed or examined or understood or recognized. But then once you get it, you'll find the infection will spread among your people. And you can't ignore the historical reality, the cultural reality, the economic reality, the political reality, and so forth of colonization. You can't ignore the impact that that has had and continues to have on us, and therefore the necessity of rejection of anything and everything that comes from them. It's a necessity. Even if you can say, okay, that's not fair and balanced, maybe there's some good and so forth. Okay, but in perfect conditions, we could engage in that. If we didn't exist in the context in which we do live, which is their relentless domination and their subversion of our own understanding of our deen and our own societies and our own history, actively and relentlessly. If all of that context didn't exist, then okay, we can pick and choose. Then we have the intellectual autonomy to do that. But the reality is otherwise. And in my opinion, the reality dictates and requires and necessitates that we just blanket reject anything and everything that's coming from the West and that's coming from kuffar, in terms of their ideologies, in terms of their theories, and so forth. And we should not, and we should do, because this is what they do to us. Let's be honest. They don't have a discussion with us except within their framework, within their paradigms. They insist that any discussion that we have with them must be within their paradigms. For example, atheism. We can't have a discussion with them except on the premise that religion is a fairy tale that we choose to believe in. Any discussion that we have with them, we have to, because, okay, for us, Islam permeates everything. It's the framework of understanding anything and everything in our life, anything and everything in reality. We don't have a political discussion except that it's an Islamic discussion. We don't have an economics discussion except that it is an Islamic discussion. We don't talk about psychology except that it is an Islamic discussion. That's our framework. That's our paradigm. And we insist that if you're having a conversation or a discussion with us, it will be and it must be within that framework. We're not going to adopt your framework on any of these matters. You want everything to be atheistic and so-called secular, and we have to enter into the discussion assuming that you're right. That you're right in the way that you frame things. That you're right in believing that there's no God, for example, and that people just choose to believe in God. And your interpretation of what religion is, and that religion is just a man-made tool for manipulation and control, and so forth. Well, atheism is too. Your atheism is too. Just like it was for your religion. Your atheism is too. Just the same way that you came over and colonized with the Bible and with Christianity, now you're coming over and colonizing with atheism. Trying to make us accept, again, your framework and your paradigms and all of that, intellectually, religiously, socially, politically, morally, all of that. It's exactly the same. And this is very key. It's very key for Muslims to reject accepting to be involved in any conversation or any discussion that presumes atheism to be true, and that presumes Islam to be false, that presumes Islam to be a man-made fabrication. We can't. If those are the terms of the discussion, then there won't be one. We won't have a discussion with you, because that's already conceding all of the most important ground of our life. To just concede to you, okay, we accept that religion generally, including our own, is just a man-made fabrication. And the reason why you want to do that, especially with atheism, is the same reason why you wanted to do it in your own countries, in the West, why you wanted to do it in Europe and so on, to impose atheism on people and remove their belief in God so that you could be the gods. Yeah. And now that's the same reason why you want to do it to us. You want to impose upon us this acceptance that atheism is actually real and true and empirically provable and so on. And that religion, including Islam, is empirically dubious at best and so forth. According to you, kuffar, who don't believe in anything anyway, you want us to accept that belief so that you can become the authority over us. Because as long as we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can never be the authority over us, and that's driving you crazy. Yeah, this is the thing that Muslims also have to understand. And I think that because Muslims are just generally very good-hearted, kind-hearted people, always give the benefit of the doubt, even to, they give the benefit of the doubt to Iblis sometimes. They're very kind and compassionate and always want to think the best of people. And so, for some reason, it's very important for Muslims, for me to say, for example, that awa al-halaq means well, or that some Christians say, for example, say pro-Palestinian Christian, pro-Palestinian activists or whatever, that they mean well and there's nothing nefarious, there's no ulterior motive or what have you. But you don't understand that they themselves are the victims and the hostages of a nefarious belief system. So anything and everything that they do has a nefarious element to it. Whether they know it or not, it doesn't matter. You have to know it because you're a Muslim and Allah told you about them and about their belief. So don't expect them to know it. They're confused and in the dark anyway. But you're in the light, so you should be able to know that someone in the dark, they may not have any intention to knock things over as they're stumbling around in the darkness, but they undoubtedly will. And if they're firing in the dark, they can hit somebody. They may not intend to, but it's negligent on your part if you actually assume that just because they don't know that they have an ulterior motive, that they don't know that there's something nefarious, some poison in the honey, you have to know that there is, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you about these people. I mean, but here's the thing I would say about Arab Christians. I know people get mad about this. But when you talk about, for example, Arab Christians or Palestinian Christians specifically, Palestinian Christians being very close to the Muslims, and feeling a close kinship with the Muslims, and that, for example, maybe you have a priest named Muhammad, and all of these kinds of things, all you're doing actually is saying great things about the Muslims. That's all you're saying. How great the Muslims have been towards the Christians. That's the only thing that you said. You didn't say anything great about the Christians. You said something great about the Muslims who deal with them in such a way. Because if we're honest, how can you be, I'm sorry, but how can you be an Arab Christian 1,500 years later? When the only thing that you have to be proud of in the whole history of your people in that region is Islam. That's the only thing that you have to be proud of. And even Wa'il Halaq can't stop singing the praises of Sharia and Islam. So what is wrong in your mind that you know that the only thing that you really have to be proud of and that you can't stop singing the praises of, but you don't accept it for yourself? You don't become a Muslim. How does that make any sense at all? So the more you talk about how close they are to the Muslims and so on, just shows how far they are from Islam and how kind and how good the Muslims have been towards them. It doesn't say anything about that they're actually close and that they actually have any great understanding or what have you. It shows actually how deep their rejection is of Islam. That after all these centuries, with nothing to show for it from your own religion and your own so-called belief system and so on, and the only thing that you have to be proud of is Islam and the history of Islam in your region, that you still didn't become a Muslim. That shows how deep your rejection is of Islam, to me. Of course, a Palestinian Christian will suffer alongside all of the other Palestinians. So they have a shared experience of oppression and hardship. So there's a level of closeness there. And of course, they have just the overall similar, they come from the same place, they speak the same language, they so on and so on. So there's those similarities and that level of closeness too. But that's not any different from me and other Americans, and I couldn't be farther away from them and them from me. So no, all of these types of things really get on my nerves. It really irritates me. It's almost like you're going to get offended that I call him a kafir. Mm-hmm. And everything that goes along with that word. It all applies. There's nothing about him unless and until he declares publicly, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. He's a kafir. Thus, it doesn't matter how many nice things he says. He's not a Muslim and he doesn't understand Islam and he doesn't understand Sharia. And in fact, that's clear from his writing.
I mean, least of all in authority.
He's an Arab John Esposito. That's all he is. And for us, because I said this in the chat. For us, like Wa'il Halaq is like the Brad Pitt character in 12 Years a Slave. He's one of them, but he's nice to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's one of them in that the Brad Pitt character was a white guy, but he was an indentured servant. So it didn't make him like the slave, like the African American slave who can never get out. While Halak is a Christian. Okay, he's Arab. So he's like us in that, but he's Christian. So he's like an indentured servant, not like a slave. And he can go to the West and he can go to Canada and he can get a big job at Columbia University or what have you. And he can write all of these wonderful things about Islam and how the Islamic government and Sharia and all of that is superior to the West. We don't get to say that. We can't say that in the West, except that we'll be labeled extremist or terrorist or what have you.
Yeah.
So he's Brad Pitt, and we love him. We're so happy to get some kind of what feels like relief from their side, someone who is from their side who's saying nice things about us. But the weird thing is that there's so many people who don't even know he's from their side.
Yeah.
This is a really dangerous,
disturbing thing.
It's very disturbing.
Yeah, it's
how many people?
Deeply troubling.
I mean, there was one guy who did a whole series of videos on his books. And I saw someone in the comment section on my video saying, I watched the entire series by a Muslim who did a whole series about Wa'il Halaq and his books.
Okay.
He said, I watched that whole series and I'm just now learning from your video that he's Christian.
That's ridiculous. That's really ridiculous.
I mean, it's almost like you're changing now the definition of a Muslim now.
Yeah.
This is these political Muslim types, the Islamist political Islam types, the Khilafah obsessed types. You're an honorary Muslim if you're an advocate for Sharia. If you're an advocate for Islamic governance, if you're an advocate for Khilafah or whatever, you're honorary, you're a Muslim. You're basically like a Muslim. It's on an equal level as testifying La ilaha illallah for them. Like you've really gone very far.